My name is Jacob Crowe, and welcome to the Crowe's Perch. From atop my perch, we delve into the latest RPG horror stories. Before we get started with the video, I'd like to thank everybody who's subscribed to the channel recently, and left a like or comment on my most recent videos. And a special thank you to everybody who's joined our Discord server lately. The channel's growing a lot faster than I expected, and I'd like to keep it growing. And I may have something special planned if we somehow reach 1K. It may or may not involve playing my own horror story, involving some of your favorite narrators. But anyway, back to the story. Today's story is titled, When You Look at Someone Through Rose-Colored Glasses, All of the Red Flags Just Look Like Flags, by user Cardboard Tube Knight, where a group of players and a wizard that guy are confronted with an unbudging GM. And without further ado, let's gather up a murder and get right into this story. Some backstory. Several years ago, I was part of an RPG guild that met for meetup. A lot of the people in the group end up kind of flitting in and out because of real life and the like. My good friend Skull is one of the founding members. A friend of his, Inari, is another. And then there's me. Together, the three of us decide to join a game that had an advert posted on our local game store by someone looking for players. This game came from someone outside of the guild. So we meet up for a session 0, and the DM, we'll call him SH, had several other players ready. The wizard, NB, is not in attendance, which you will see will lead to some problems later. He offered up several adventures in the adventure paths that we could choose from. A lot of them seem rough, and one of the players was very new. Let me go ahead and list out everyone we have in the game. CTK, that's me. My good friend, Skull, our fighter of some sort. My other friend, Inari, our cleric. Nor, our bard who was from Russia, or the Ukraine. The DM, SH, an older guy who had boasted that he had played at tables with Gygax in Greenwood, which made me think this was going to be awesome. We're getting a real old school DM, the kind of guy who had been there since the formative years of the game. Then we have Wolf, the newbie, and our dwarf ranger, and that guy, our wizard. We'll call him NB for short. There might have been one other person that didn't do much, but we decided to play Pathfinder's Legacy of Fire adventure path. We picked this one because it was one of the choices that the DM offered that didn't seem like it would kill us over and over, and we kind of wanted a long-term game with these characters. The first thing that should have been a kind of red flag was when I, hearing that the setting was kind of North Africa, Middle East type analog, thought it would be cool to play the ninja class, kind of reflavored as an Assassin's Creed type guy, with wrist blades and the like. The DM shot this down right away, very upset at the idea. I took it in stride and built a rogue. A week or two goes by, and it's the first session. I show up, and the next little issue begins. My rogue is a woman. I'm a 6'3" dude who might look a little out of place at a gaming table to some people, as I am also black. I don't think he expected me to play a female character, let alone a kind of small female rogue who was this kind of stuck-up thief. The DM seemed taken aback by it, and you could see the visible confusion as he asked me again if I had filled this out right, as if I didn't know my own gender, or the difference between the words male and female. We get past that little hurdle, and the next one quickly arises. Skull is a bit of a voice actor at the table, and plays chompers with this kind of voice that is clear, but just kind of nasally, and honestly reminds me of Yoshi's, from the old Super Mario World show from the early 90s. No one else seems to have an issue with it, but whenever Chompers speaks, the DM gives Skull this look like he's just mad. Skull didn't just do this at session 1. He demonstrated the voice during our session 0, as he had the idea then. SH said nothing at that point. I guess he thought it wouldn't be permanent. I remember thinking, this is going to become a thing. Inari decides that his cleric is going to go for this kind of special trait or something in Pathfinder, for healers where they have to heal some super high amount of damage to earn a special boon. The catch is that you lose points towards the goal when you do damage. When he runs this by the DM, he gets a little antsy about the idea of doing it, and seems like he's going to refuse. Of course, Inari insists that he will track it all. Inari is a bit of an old school player himself that doesn't really let rules violations slip past without saying something. He's not going to let the points go unaccounted for or let them slip by. The DM finally agrees. Halfway through session 1, an issue with NB arises. Remember how I said he wasn't there for session 0? We get into some situation and ask his wizard to do something, and he's like, my character wouldn't do that. A little more time passes, and then comes the revelation that he doesn't have most of his gear either. No staff, for instance, or weapon of any kind. just a spellbook. For those not familiar with Pathfinder, it is like D&D 3.5 and pretty different from 5th edition. If you know how wizards in 5th edition and 4th edition work, they always have something wizard that they can pull out. But Pathfinder wizards have spells that run out more easily. Cantrips are also not expendable, just like in 5th edition, but there are rules around them involving spell schools and some taking up more slots. Plus the damage they do is shift. So a wizard without a crossbow or something is going to spend some combats useless. NB tells us that he's just playing the type of wizard that he wants and envisioned. Sure. Whatever. First session is mostly okay other than that. At the end of session, the DM comes to Skull and asks that he stop doing the character voice, since the DM has an issue understanding it. Skull doesn't like this, as he's had the whole thing planned out about how he wanted to play that character, and how he instead asks if he can create a new character. Skull is understanding and accommodating, and makes no huge deal about this. The DM lets him make a new dude. Session 2 is where the real trouble gets kicked off. There's a caravan that we're guarding or riding with or something, and there's a missing sheep or lamb or goat or something. This woman wants us to help find the animal, and we can tell that this is some small quest or something, to kind of endear her or the caravan to the party. When we go to strike out to help, the wizard refuses, saying that his character wouldn't do that, so we go at it alone. NB is kind of cold to us and refuses to really do much, besides act pompous, but the rest of the table kind of pushes past this and works around him. There are light moments of others trying to interact with him, but he doesn't budge on being stuck up. Session 2 kind of leaves a weird taste in my mouth, but it is more to do with the wizard than anything else. I discussed this with Skull. We had a habit, he and Nari and I, of going to this diner after we played that was just up from the game store. It was usually late enough that the place was empty, and it was one of the places our guild would frequent. We did invite the rest of the table, but they all had things to do. Session 3 comes around and we're in the town, doing part of the main quest line by now. And there's a nice detailed map. Noir and I have a little report going, and she's on the roguey side of barddom. There was a cool part of this session where the party gets ambushed in town, and the bard was one street over. I slip into the corner and sneak out, and she and I get to the rooftops and pepper these ambushers with arrows and spells until our group can break out and fight them off. It was dope, but when we were asked to go into this one building to fight something else a little later, the wizard refuses. He claims his character wouldn't do that, and waits outside while we, weak from the previous fight these monsters. Let me just say right here that Pathfinder adventure paths were known to be kind of deadly, so being one member down for encounters sucks. We press on through some other stuff, and things come to a bit of a head. Inari, our cleric, tries to do something. I don't remember exactly what, but he had been growing frustrated with some of the things the DM was doing. Some of the fights would be balls hard, and then there would be these unbalanced, weirdly easy ones. The DM had said that we could power game a bit, and that the module was made for it, but it turned out he was inserting some things and omitting others. The thing that finally made Inari upset was when he did whatever it was he did in this session, and the DM told him, no. It wasn't the no that caused the problem. It was what the DM said next. Basically, that the rules don't say you can do that. Well, Inari, being one of those stickler for rules types, pulls out his phone and goes through the SRD site for Pathfinder. DM says, that's not the book. A little argument erupts about how accurate the site is, which, if you don't know, is basically rules pulled right out of the book, unless you're on third-party or homebrew stuff. The DM finally hits his hands on the table. Nor jumps. Wolf seems pretty shocked, and the rest of us get really awkward about this. DM tells Inari if the rule is in the book, find it, and slams that big tail-feathered Pathfinder 1st edition book on the table to slide it down to him. It really only slides to Skull, and Skull passes it over with an awkward look on his face. I was in the opposite corner from Inari at the table, but there was no one between us. For the next several minutes, I can hear him muttering and flipping through pages. He finds the rule, notes it down, and waits until the end to share it with the DM. The rest of the night goes awkwardly, and DM seems to accept the rule after the game is over, though he doesn't really apologize. We go to our diner again, and oddly enough, DM tags along this time. He's completely reasonable, and it's just the four of us. We talk about random things, and it feels like, okay, maybe this will kind of repair things a bit and make them feel better. Session 4. The wizard is still being a shift bag, refusing to play anything but the end of a tail feather. We've accepted it. Wolf is learning the game better and coming out of his shell a little. Some kind of creature shows up in the town this time, and we're sent to talk to it. I remember it being something higher level, like a sphinx or some such. Noir and I would crack jokes from time to time. We weren't loud or really doing it all session, but we were pretty attentive and into our characters. I made a crack to her about how it would be funny if I just stole this thing the creature had while it was talking. It was obviously meant to be a joke, and it wasn't while the DM was talking. We were coming up with what to say back, and she was going to probably end up speaking for us as the bard. The DM stops everyone at the table and tells me to go ahead and roll for it. I'm confused and ask for what? He explains that I shouldn't have declared an action if I'm not willing to do it. Keep in mind, we're not in combat, and this thing has so far just spoken to us. Most DMs, if they were just trying to teach me a lesson about being careful about what I say, would have dropped it right there. But he insists. I straight up tell him no. For a few minutes he tries to push me to do this thing, lectures me about joking, and how this is a serious game. This hadn't really been an issue before. There had been jokes at the table from everyone except the wizard. It really sucked, because most of the time the game was decent. The wizard had sucked, but everyone else playing at the table was fine. I joined this game to play with Skull and Inari, because it usually ended up that in the guild, one of us was running the game, or we were in different games because of the order we had joined them. We just wanted a game together. Eventually, the DM lets it go. I get real quiet, and spend the rest of the session kind of going through the motions as needed. I don't talk again in character, and only speak to declare what I'm doing. The mood went sour for me right there. After the session ended, I dropped out of the game. Oddly enough, Inari stuck with it for longer than Skull or I, but he reported that there were several issues. Even after we left, the encounters were all over the place. The wizard never warmed up to anyone, and the game became a bit of a drag. I don't think SH answered my email about leaving, and to be honest, some of this might be my poor memory of events. Like I might have lasted 5 sessions, and Skull might have quit in 4, before me getting yelled at or something like that. I remember talking with Skull about my quitting, mostly, and I remember feeling kind of defeated over the whole thing, as I had only learned Pathfinder in D&D a few years before, and it was one of my first in-person experiences with the game. I'm still playing and DMing though. 5th edition is my game now, so it didn't turn me off. Just because you played with Gygax doesn't mean you're an amazing DM. Also, didn't Gygax only play tournament modules with people? That is the furthest thing from a normal game of D&D. After playing several competitive modules myself, they are exactly that, competitive. Not the greatest kind of mentality you want to bring into your normal home game, which is often cooperative. And while the OP doesn't explicitly say it, I'm getting this kind of implicit feeling that there's a bit of aggressive adversarial GMing going on. Also, is it just me, or is Inari the greatest kind of rules lawyer? Though I'm honestly really surprised he stuck it out longer than the rest of them. And with that, I think we're gonna wrap this up. Let me know what you guys think about the story in the comments down below, and if you'd like to take the conversation further, be sure to join us on the Perch in our new Discord channel. Just follow the link below and become a burb today. Until next time. As the crow flies,